All right, after steering the United States through major economic hurdles, including the COVID-19 pandemic, today is Jerome Powell's last day as chair of the Federal Reserve. Let's bring in producer for CBS News Consumer Business and Tech Unit, Emily Pandise. Emily, thank you for your time today. So let's talk about Powell's legacy here and how his tumultuous relationship with President Trump ended up in this huge and big attention and even threats from the president. Tell us more about what happened there.
You know, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is going to be remembered for two things: his fight to maintain the Fed's independence and his record on inflation. You know, he's been fielding insults and demands for lower interest rates since the beginning of his tenure in 2018 from Trump, and really didn't respond to them very much at all until January, when that Department of Justice probe was launched into the renovations at the Federal Reserve building in Washington, D.C. He released that video essentially saying intimidation coming from the White House and that he wouldn't stand for it. And, you know, Powell had long planned to retire, but said that he had no choice but to stay on the board despite stepping down as chair. In terms of inflation, you know, critics of Powell say that he didn't move enough to bring inflation down. You remember in July of 2022, inflation peaked at 9%, the highest in 40 years. But, you know, Powell's supporters say that, yes, inflation went up. It is still not back at the Fed's 2% target, but we avoided a really deep recession, and employment has remained relatively stable throughout Powell's time as chair.
Yeah, and Emily, you touched on this a bit earlier, because despite today being Powell's last day as chair, his tenure on the Fed's board of governors could continue until 2028. So will he still have influence in how the Federal Reserve runs?
You know, Powell has said he plans to keep a low profile. This is the first time since the 1940s that a current Fed chair and a former Fed chair will be on the board together. So we'll see what happens at that next meeting in June when Kevin Warsh is at the helm. But remember, you know, interest rate decisions, monetary policy are not decided just by the Fed chair. The board of people, the board of governors who vote to make these decisions. So, of course, Powell will have a vote, but he's not the person in charge of getting consensus among the board of governors and among the Fed bank presidents to make sure a decision is actually reached.
Okay, Emily Pandise, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.